All right. Hello, good evening, and thanks for being with us tonight. Here on the Hill, I'm Blake Burman. So as we just mentioned, eyes on Iran from the commander-in-chief. President Trump continuing to weigh possible next steps against the Iranian regime amid deadly protests. Trump saying Iran is no longer executing protesters.
We're going to watch and see what the process is, but we were given a very good statement by people that are aware of what's going on.
Plus the diplomatic push elsewhere. J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, and a White House meeting with leaders from Greenland. Trump said he was about to be briefed. So what happens next there? Also at this hour, do you have reception? I don't. I'm among the many. There is a major outage involving one of the biggest phone carriers. Why so many Americans today were hung up. And raging against the machines tonight, the state that might pull a 180 and strip away those tax breaks for the massive data centers. Chris Steyerwalt is with me in moments on why this suddenly is becoming some angst all across the country. But first tonight, the commander-in-chief and his national security team. President Trump weighing options at this hour on whether or not to use the U.S. military to strike Iran again. And as he has that potential decision before him, his top two, J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio, with the White House meeting on what could come next with Greenland.
We need Greenland for national security, so we're going to see what happens. If we don't go in, Russia's going to go in and China's going to go in. And there's not a thing that Denmark can do about it, but we can do everything about it.
Joe Khalil in a moment on that diplomatic duo, but we begin first with our Kelly Meyer covering the president tonight and a big decision before him over at the White House. Hello, Kelly.
Yeah, hey there, Blake. I'm keeping my phone close to me tonight as there are constant updates on this. I just heard from a source with knowledge that they are moving a carrier group from the South China Sea to the CENTCOM area of responsibility. So that means in the Middle East region, but that could take about a week or so to complete. But moving some assets to the region, so military hardware coming in the direction of the Middle East. But the question today, though, is it true what the president said there in the Oval Office, or is it tactical? That's the question on everyone's mind here tonight after what the president said just a few hours ago, a complete departure from what he said 24 hours ago when he said help is on the way and that he would take very strong action if there were executions. And then he said this in the Oval Office a short time ago.
We've been told that the killing in Iran is stopping, and it's stopped, and it's stopping. And there's no plan for executions or an execution or executions. So I've been told that a good authority. We'll find out about it. I'm sure if it happens, we'll all be very upset.
But also today, Blake, a source familiar told me that they were moving U.S. personnel out of the U.S. bases in the Middle East, and that included the base in Doha, Qatar. That's the same base that Iran targeted in retaliation for U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities this past summer. And one Iranian woman I just spoke with on the phone a short time ago, she said she still can't get in touch with her brother in Tehran. She told me that it's a complete blackout and it's not looking good at all. And when I asked her about what President Trump said today about the killing ending and no executions planned, she said that's not true. He doesn't know. But Iran's foreign minister says Iran prefers a diplomatic solution, but that history has shown it's the U.S., he says, that usually opts for war. Blake?
Kelly, so we see there the moves from the United States that you were just reporting on. And tonight we're learning as well Iran clearing its airspace. What do we know?
Yeah, we were just getting that in. As I said, I'm keeping my phone close to me as we are hearing about that as well, that Iran is closing its airspace as they seem to be signaling that some sort of an attack is imminent. It seemed like sources we are hearing from in the Department of War are kind of shaking off anything that might be imminent. But again, what the president said there in the Oval Office, it's really hard to read whether or not you take him at his word that the killings are ending and they're playing this off-ramp for diplomacy, or if it is part of a larger strategy and something could be happening soon. But we do know that the Iranian airspace has been closed, according to those reports. Blake?
As news breaks, stand by. Kelly, give us a ring. Let us know. Kelly Meyer, live on the North Lawn. Kelly, thank you. With us now, Republican Congressman Ryan Zinke of Montana, back with us once again. He sits on the Foreign Affairs Committee, was also the Interior Secretary in the first Trump administration. I should also note a former member of SEAL Team 6, a man who has worn many hats in his life, with us live tonight once again here on the Hill. You come at this, Congressman, from a lot of different perspectives. Where do you think the Commander-in-Chief is this evening?
I think he has options ahead of him. One of the options on the table is to strike the military units in Iran that are holding the people hostage. So certainly the Revolutionary Guard, to me, is a legitimate target. And look, let's look at Iran is. They're the funder of Hezbollah, of Hamas, the funder of international terrorism. And by the way, Venezuela is home to the largest concentration of Hezbollah and Hamas outside the Middle East. So they haven't been a friend of mine. And I say to my friends, can you imagine the Middle East without a radical Islamic government that currently the Khomeini Empire is holding? I mean, the Middle East could be extraordinarily prosperous, and we wouldn't have to have the Fifth Fleet in the Middle East if we had a peaceful and working Middle East.
Among the many questions is how do you get there, and potentially when. Kelly Meyer, I think, was spot on there, Congressman, when it came to sort of the possible shift in tone from the president. Obviously, the news is moving fast here. He's receiving briefings. But yesterday he said, you know, help is on the way, keep protesting. And then today he was asked about military options a couple times. Let me play that for you, and then we'll pick it up on the other side.
Does this mean military action is now off the table against Iran?
We're going to watch it and see what the process is.
It seems like there was a little bit of a different tone there. Do you think he is still considering the possibility of military options?
Well, knowing President Trump, I don't think he's taking anything off the table, nor should he. I think he's looking at the reports, and we have, you know, a very sophisticated intelligence network. Venezuela should tell everyone and reinforce that. So we're looking at it. I think he's getting briefs, you know, probably hourly on it, but he has options ahead of him. We have an enormous amount of force. Obviously, we can strike Iran from the homeland if we care to. There's a couple holes in Iran that would say we can.
It's interesting you say strike from the homelands, and you keep bringing up Venezuela. As we know, a couple hundred of the best military personnel, commandos, were involved in that mission. As I mentioned, you were a member of SEAL Team 6. Do you believe any action involving Iran should mean no U.S. personnel going in under any circumstances?
I think you'd have to look at situation and terrain and the target set. You know, we're a long ways away from Desert One in our sophistication and capability. And I'm old enough to remember Desert One, and I applaud Jimmy Carter for making that decision. While the operation is not successful, we've come a long ways in our ability to strike. And look, during the Trump administration, we've struck Iran from aircraft based in the U.S. We've struck and successfully pulled out Maduro from Venezuela, and if necessary, the U.S. would strike. But a lot of it is the Iranian people. You know, Iranian people are very educated of the Middle East. They have an enormously rich culture, and I'm glad to see that they're rising up against a very repressive regime. But again, the hope is that Middle East turns the corner. Without, you know, Iran funding Hezbollah, Hamas, and the terrorist group, the Middle East would be enormously prosperous. An economic juggernaut.
Let me leave you with this, Congressman. You are a member of Congress, obviously. Chuck Schumer in the Senate says this needs to be debated by Congress, meaning if the president were to go forward with military action, something like the War Powers Act, the Constitution, he said, requires a discussion in Congress. Do you agree, or do you believe that the White House should do as they choose?
Well, would the military in Iran be a legitimate target? I believe the president has that ability, and they're a designated terrorist group, so I do believe he has that authority. Venezuela, it wasn't an act of war. Clearly in Venezuela, you had a leader that was non-elected. You know, he got into the office by fraud, and he was a clear and present danger to the U.S. on his narco network, which was killing thousands and thousands of Americans. Iran, I'm a little sensitive to it because I fought in the Middle East. I can tell you a lot of my friends aren't here today because of what Iran supported in Iraq.
As I mentioned, bringing the perspective for us tonight, Congressman Ryan Zinke, Republican Montana, with us. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. We'll catch you again soon. Well, from Iran to Greenland, President Trump not backing down on his effort to potentially seize Greenland from Denmark.
We need it for national security. I spoke with, as you know, Mark, the head of NATO, and he really wants to see something happen.
The comments come shortly after the Vice President, J.D. Vance, and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, met with the foreign ministers of Denmark and Greenland. Those ministers saying the U.S. and Denmark have a, quote, fundamental disagreement over Greenland.
Greenland, for the time being and for foreseeable future, will remain within the Kingdom of Denmark. And therefore, this is a common position that we want to work with our American friends and allies.
Our Joe Khalil, been following this story, as so many of us have. Joe, with us tonight. You know, for all the talk, and rightfully so, about Iran, you had J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, and the leaders of Greenland and Denmark today trying to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah, incredibly high-stakes meeting. And you heard those foreign ministers as they came out, fundamental disagreement. They actually said, look, we agree that Greenland's defense posture needs to be increased, but they said that can't come at the price of sacrificing territorial integrity, the sovereignty of the country. They don't want to be annexed by the United States, and that's what they feel is happening, that they feel is the plan from the White House. I talked to a bunch of people on Capitol Hill. Republicans, Democrats are saying this is insane, is the word I've heard used a lot today. Republicans say, you know, look, they don't actually believe that President Trump is willing to use the military, even though he today didn't take that off the table as an option. They don't think that's his realistic goal. Take a listen to Senator Jim Risch, who's the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee here.
I'm the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. I can tell you there are no plans to use military action in Greenland or surrounding Greenland. There is no one that has been given directions to put together a plan. That is not on the table.
Still, some people uncomfortable by just the rhetoric even. I can tell you there are Democrats now proposing bills that say, okay, if the U.S. wants to buy Greenland, they want no taxpayer dollars to go toward that. So we'll see how that shakes out.
All right. Joe Khalil with us tonight. Joe, thank you. Well, the U.S. is in a global race for energy dominance, and two lawmakers, Democrat and Republican, reaching across the aisle to try to give the U.S. an edge. Ami Bera and Congresswoman Young Kim join me for a joint bipartisan interview on the steps Congress is taking on that front. You'll hear from them both just ahead here on the Hill. Plus, is there an about-face on data centers? Why Arizona is now considering pulling the plug over tax breaks as backlash from communities grow there. Now President Trump stepping in. Also tonight, a judge greenlights more ICE agents in Minneapolis as clashes surge between federal agents and protesters once again. And is college losing its luster? Why more Gen Zers are picking trade schools over those four-year universities. Speaking of four, we're back in 4 minutes. I'm Blake Burman. See you on the next one. All right, well, a new fight is heating up in communities all over this country as data centers continue to pop up as they are key to the future of artificial intelligence. Companies are constructing new massive data centers across the country, sometimes lured by tax breaks. But there's now pushback in communities, including concerns that data centers spike their power bills. The tech giant Microsoft now announcing a 5-point plan to address the blowback. The plan includes a commitment to pay for utility price increases around the new centers. President Trump previewed the move, hailed it as well, saying Microsoft would take steps to, quote, ensure Americans don't pick up the tab for the data centers. But even so, some states are pulling back on their plans to attract these behemoths. Arizona, for example, is now reviewing the tax breaks that it's offered companies who want to come in and build.
It's time we make the booming data center industry work for the people of our state rather than the other way around.
That there, the Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs, just the other day on her State of the State address. Joining me now, Chris Steyerwalt, host of the Hill Sunday, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Hello, sir.
Sure.
I've got Democrats telling me, I've got Republicans telling me that this is a huge issue. It's a sleeping issue. It just sort of popped up on us. but it's here for 2026 and beyond.
Maybe they should generate some real dank AI memes to post on social media to talk about their feelings about it.
Why is this suddenly popping up?
Well, for 20 years, 30 years, the United States followed imbecilic policy as it relates to electricity. We have a decrepit grid that cannot handle the load that's on it. It's outdated, it's outmoded. We sold people a bunch of electric cars. We gave them big tax breaks to buy electric cars, subsidizing that market. People bought a lot of electric cars. And then we did another thing. And we said, stop using dirty old coal. You've got to use natural gas. You've got to use all this abundant natural gas that we've discovered that through fracking and other means that we can now have all this stuff. Well, natural gas ain't so cheap anymore. And we have all of the grid dependent on all of this natural gas. And electric use in the United States was basically flat 2010 to 2021.
I didn't notice anything on my bill, basically.
And use has gone, and this is good in the sense that it means that Americans are not just those electric cars and not just AI, but in a host of things, right? Americans are just using more electricity, and that means the prices are going to go up because we don't have a grid that has kept pace.
I'm looking at Limerick, Pennsylvania, northwest there of Philly. Proposed Limerick data center draws questions over environmental impact. That story coming out just yesterday. At Pennsylvania poll, support for data center development, it's basically split. 38% support, 35% opposed. But Chris, there was a Emerson College poll from Pennsylvania that came out. 48% believe that AI and these data centers will have a negative impact on the economy. 55% say it will decrease jobs. And 23% say they know someone who's lost their job due to the implementation of AI. I am as pro-AI as anyone that you will find.
You better say that or you'll be in trouble with AI. They'll come and get you.
But this is part of the issue and why these communities now are fighting back and why these politicians are recognizing it and trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah, and it makes a great scapegoat, right? These big, mean companies, big corporations, and they're coming in and doing all this stuff. But you listen to what Microsoft's saying, what these companies are saying. They would love to build power plants. Let us build power plants, they say. Let us, and this is where all this more, this increased nuclear capacity is coming online. You look at a state like Virginia and you compare it to a state like what's going on in Arizona. What Virginia is saying is we want to build power plants, more and more and more power plants, and get as many of those tech jobs and as much of that stuff in Virginia as possible. In Arizona, they're saying nope, 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 reverse, reverse. Now they have different electricity and water considerations in Arizona than they do in Virginia, so it's a little different. But some states are going to win and some states are going to lose on this, and populist politics are going to make it complicated.
Speaking to a member of Congress from Arizona recently, and with all the backdrop of everything that's going on in Washington, I asked them, what's the big issue where you are? And their answer was water. Right?
Yeah, it's Arizona, it's always water.
Yep. Chris Steyerwalt, thank you, brother.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate it. All right, still to come here on the Hill. Space mission cut short. Why 4 astronauts now headed back to Earth at this very hour, ending their time in space a month early. The mission going on right now. We'll explain it on the other side. Plus, call unanswered. Why millions of us, I mean us, lost cell phone service today, and there's a whole lot of folks who still don't have it. Are you one of them? The very latest when we return. All right, just about 6:30 here on the East Coast. Here's some of the headlines that are coming into our newsroom at this hour. It doesn't matter where you live. 6:30 on the East Coast, 3:30 out west, any point in between. If you're attached to your phone and a Verizon user, you probably have dealt with some missed calls and messages today. There are users across several states, from Florida to Massachusetts to Texas, reporting problems with their Verizon service. If you were impacted by the outage, you probably saw your cell phone at some point go into that SOS mode and end up without service, some only allowing 911 emergency calls unless connected to the internet. Now, many phones still down at this hour. Verizon says it is aware of the outage and it is working to fix it still. Late this afternoon, tensions flaring in Minneapolis as protesters clash with ICE agents. There are live pictures now outside the federal building in Minneapolis, serving as a center for their operations in that area. NewsNation capturing this video right here of agents tackling and arresting a protester. The demonstrations follow last week's shooting, of course, of Renee Good, who was killed during an ICE protest. DHS saying today the agent who shot Good suffered from internal bleeding. from that incident as well. A viral video making the rounds showing President Trump giving a heckler the middle finger. Happened yesterday while the president was touring a Ford factory in Michigan. One of the employees there called the president a, quote, pedophile protector, an apparent reference to Jeffrey Epstein, prompting that gesture then from the president. The White House is defending the president's action today, calling it, quote, an appropriate and unambiguous response. That heckler now suspended from his job, but says they have no regrets. I have no clue what time zone it is where they are right now, but they are certainly headed back to Earth. 4 astronauts on their way home from the International Space Station. Now, just moments ago, they strapped into the SpaceX capsule to begin their trip back to Earth. They're returning a month early due to a serious medical concern with one of the crew members on board. Crew 11 is expected to splash down off the coast of California Thursday morning. All right, well, college. Is it falling out of favor with the next generation? An increasing share of Gen Z are ditching the 4-year degree for trade school educations. Right now, 58% of enrollments in trade schools are members of Gen Z. It's an issue the White House has been closely following and pushing for in some extent. The administration issued an executive order last year aimed at training more Americans for high-paying trade jobs. Our Xavier Walton went back to the classroom. Worcester Technical High School in Massachusetts is where he is tonight with what students are telling him there. Hello, Xavier.
Hey there, Blake. So yeah, right now we are hanging out in the plumbing department. You can see here the water heater. We've got the copper wiring. But these are all things that students are learning to use. You've got the sink, and then obviously they keep going here this way. You got the toilet. But here's the thing. This is just one of 23 programs for students to choose from. Each program providing a different path to a profession, from carpentry to cosmetology, from biotech to electrical, or say plumbing, like where we are. You're getting a real-life, hands-on training in high school. Since 2017, interest in trade schools has nearly doubled. Research suggests Gen Z, yep, they're the ones sparking the movement. Among the top reasons: avoiding student debt, reducing the risk of being replaced by AI, and faster access to more income.
Everyone needs HVAC. That's the thing. It's going to be around here for hundreds and hundreds of years. I could start my own company, I could make my own hours, and I could make a lot of money.
Kyle, great kid, wicked smart. Also, you got to think about this too. 20 to 30% of students here that graduate actually go into the same field that they graduated from. The wait list just to get into this school, Blake, it's about 1,000 kids just to get into the high school.
Wow, amazing. Xavier Walton for us, Worcester, Massachusetts tonight. Accent, pictures and all. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Well, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, Vice President J.D. Vance, meeting today with foreign ministers from Denmark and Greenland. The latest step in President Trump's push to potentially acquire Greenland, a Danish territory, he says for the purposes of national security.
You know, we're doing the Golden Dome. We're doing a lot of things, and we really need it. If we don't go in, Russia's going to go in, and China's going to go in. And there's not a thing that Denmark can do about it, but we can do everything about it.
Now, one of the key reasons behind the push could potentially lie underground. Look at that. Greenland has 1.5 million tons of rare earth mineral reserves. That's basically, close to it at least, the same as the U.S. when it comes to rare earths. Those are critical components of the technology we use every single day. And right now, China leads the way. The U.S. even taking a stake in at least 6 companies. This is brand new policy, specializing in rare earth minerals. And 2 California representatives now reaching across the aisle to try to help. This is at least maybe their solution in the rare earth minerals race. Congresswoman Young Kim, a Republican. Congressman Ami Bera, a Democrat, introducing together what they call the Dominance Act, which is aimed at building critical mineral supply chains and reducing our reliance on China. I spoke to both of them just a little while ago on what this could soon mean. Congressman Barrett, Congresswoman Kim, thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. Appreciate it. It's nice to see you both. It's not lost on me, let me start here, that I'm looking here at a Democrat and a Republican from the exact same state, standing next to each other, saying, you know what, we got to build out our critical minerals, and you're putting this legislation out there together. Explain why.
Well, first of all, China's or Xi Jinping's export controls in April and October was a wake-up call for the United States to realize how vulnerable we were with the critical mineral supply chain. But we're no longer, slip at the wheel. We're wide awake and we're answering the call to ensure that the United States is ready to build out our domestic production to meet the demands that we have at scale. But we also recognize that we couldn't do this alone, which is why we're going to bring in our allies and partners across the nation, around the globe, to be able to build out our capacity to not only mine, but process and do manufacture so that we're ready for the next generation and also, counter China's chokehold it has on critical mineral supply chain. That's why we did what we did yesterday. And you're right, this is unprecedented, but this is an issue that has wide bipartisan support. So Dominance Act is going to be a game changer for us. And we're really excited. There are like 4 different titles, and we can go and talk about those things too.
Congressman?
Well, and Blake, if I just added on, it's not a partisan issue. Critical minerals, rare earth elements go into our smartphones, computers, battery technology, and the most advanced missile capabilities, et cetera. So it's a real national security economic issue, and we can't be vulnerable to potential competitors in Beijing. So that's why this is not a Democrat or Republican issue. It's an American issue and a national security issue.
We're talking about this issue, Congressman Barrow, on a day as well when the Secretary of State and the Vice President are meeting with leaders from Greenland and from Denmark. When I look at the global rare earth reserves, it's China, as we all know, right at the top. But basically, Greenland and the U.S. are sitting there right at 7th and 8th in the world right next to each other. And I'm looking at your legislation, and it directs the Secretary of State to coordinate with allied governments. I know the president has talked about rare earths and hasn't necessarily said Greenland is exactly because of that, but it's certainly an issue. So do you think his administration is right to go down that path?
I met with the representative from Greenland as well as the ambassador from Denmark. I think they're very willing to allow American companies to come in, build infrastructure, get access to those critical minerals and resources. I also think the president wants to have more security assets there because the Arctic is increasingly a competitive playing field. We already have military bases up there, and again, I think they're more than willing to allow us to have more military bases on Greenland, so hopefully the negotiations go well.
Yes. Greenland is a strategic, location for the United States, and it has a lot of natural resources, especially in the critical mineral sector, which is why we don't want to cede the opportunity for us to work together with our partner. And so I think we will rather be the partner there rather than ceding that to our adversaries like Russia or China. And I trust our, leadership, the president, and our secretaries are meeting with the dignitaries from Denmark and Greenland. As we're speaking, they are meeting. I think I would like to trust their negotiation team skills to make sure that we get the best interest and protect our national interests.
Do you, last question for you both. The status of this bill, does it have support from the speaker, maybe from the president? Where does it stand?
I want to thank Chairman Mast, who's a co-sponsor of the bill. All of the pieces of this legislation are bipartisan. There's talk on the Senate side of doing something similar in a bipartisan way. So this isn't a partisan issue. This might be one of those bills where you can put a lot together and get across the House floor and to the president's desk.
One of those rare times you see it.
Pieces within the dominance is already being marked up, like establishing the Bureau of Energy Security. That is already included, but we want to have a designated bureau and individual who, wakes up and goes to sleep at night thinking about nothing but critical minerals. And we already have been working very closely and talking to stakeholders at the White House, DFC, and all of the tools that we have. We're putting it all together, all of the tools in one toolbox. That's what Dominance Act is.
One of the rare times you see a Democrat and Republican standing there side by side. Congresswoman Kim, Congressman Barra, thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. All right, well, still to come, President Trump's red line. Iran, are they backing down to get President Trump to back off? If so, will it last? Plus, the president flips the bird. And the person who received it, now suspended. Is this the new world of politics? Mick Mulvaney, Dan Cannon, and Emily Brooks join me other side of the break.
We've been told that the killing in Iran is stopping, and it's stopped, and it's stopping. And there's no plan for executions or executions. So I've been told that on good authority. We'll find out about it. I'm sure if it happens, we'll all be very upset.
Does this mean military action is now off the table against Iran?
And we're going to watch it and see what the process is.
President Trump, Oval Office today, as he weighs his options, as you heard there, against Iran in response to those massive anti-government protests across the country there. Full panel here with me now. Emily Brooks covers Congress for The Hill. Mick Mulvaney, former chief of staff in President Trump's first term, NewsNation contributor. And Dan Cannon, former Battleground States Director for both the Biden and Harris campaigns. Gentlemen, hello to you both. Thanks for being here. Emily, hello to you. I started the show speaking to Congressman Ryan Zinke, a Republican, about this. He said he believes the president basically has the authority to do whatever he wants as it relates to Iran. Not whatever he wants, but that he has the authority. Chuck Schumer says, let's get Congress involved. You cover that building. What are you hearing?
Well, I do expect Republicans to basically back up whatever Trump wants to do. But after Venezuela, they did not get congressional notification ahead of time for that. A lot of Republicans rationalized that, saying, well, we're assisting a law enforcement operation. They kind of accepted the administration rationale for that. But, you know, a lot of Republicans were also not quite happy that they didn't know about this ahead of time. Of course, the Trump administration, what are they going to do? They said that Congress leaks everything. And so that's why they're not going to tell them ahead of time. As a congressional reporter, I can attest to that. So, so we'll see what happens. Right. But he also has, you know, has to manage a lot of those anti-interventionist Republicans who were okay with Venezuela because it's in our hemisphere, but don't necessarily want to go back and get into entanglements in the Middle East. So he has a lot to weigh there.
So to borrow Emily's phrase, anti-interventionist Republicans, you were one of them in the first Trump house.
Still am.
Okay, advising the president back then. You've sort of changed on this issue with Iran.
Yeah.
Explain why and what you would be telling Trump tonight.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime, once-in-a-generational type of opportunity to actually change the course of history in the Middle East. Yes, I'd be encouraging to look at doing anything that could help. I mean, if they make a determination that military action would just make things worse, and it might, then you don't do that. But if you actually think you've got a chance using the military to replace the government there, you do take it. And to Emily's point, you don't tell anybody in Congress you don't have to tell, because they do leak. You've heard it from the journalist side of the thing. I've been, as a member of Congress, I want you to know the place leaks like a sieve. It absolutely does. So it doesn't surprise me they're trying to play it close to the chest. I don't know if I buy this thing about how he thinks that the executions are
yeah, I wanted to ask you that. So the president yesterday said help is on the way, keep protesting today.
I think they're not ready yet. I think they want to move assets into place, and they're not ready yet. They're buying time.
Yeah. So they're moving a strike group from.
I don't know what the specifics are, but the body language to me tells me he hasn't changed. He's just as determined as he was. But someone told him, Mr. President, we can't do it today. It might be next week. So he's buying time.
You agree there?
My understanding, and I could be wrong about this, is that we do not have an aircraft carrier in the region. I think we have this armada outside Venezuela for reasons that I can't understand. So that could be part of the calculus here.
We almost always have a carrier, though, in the Gulf someplace.
Maybe not near enough. I'm not sure, but that could be the thing that they're buying time for.
And then you got the Air Force Base at Qatar as well.
You do have that. But my question really is around, you know, the thing you said the other night, Mick, I thought was very smart. Oh. Amazing. But foreign policy happens to you and then you react to it. And you made this point about Iran as sort of this opportunity, and this is a evolving landscape, and what do you do with that? And I think that Trump will see that and react to it. And I don't want to put my thumb on the scale of whether intervention or not makes sense. But what I do know is that intervention by itself, intervention in isolation, does not make any sense. And if we go in without Congress or without allies into this kind of situation, a lot of Democrats and a lot of Republicans both thought that Trump was right on getting out of foreign wars that were silly. It's silly to go in a place without the support.
Just real quick, Mick, 648, email into my inbox, 647, Kelly Meyer, about the assets that are being moved into the region. Kelly reporting tonight, this would be the USS Abraham Lincoln. and her carrier strike group consisting of the Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers, the USS Spruance, the USS Michael Murphy, and others. So to their point, assets are being moved into the region right now, Emily.
And, you know, there's a lot of different ways things could go. I mean, you could be moving assets and maybe not use them. It could be just a show of force. But I'm not the expert on what that exactly means, but there are a lot of options that Trump could take here. He could do cyber attacks. It doesn't necessarily have to be a full-scale, gigantic intervention. And
now, Emily, you're absolutely right, because what this is an additional option. That's what they're waiting for. Like, okay, maybe we have cyber right now. Maybe we don't have kinetic military right now. We want that option, so we're going to buy some time to move these assets in. You're absolutely right. They're looking for additional options. I don't think they made up their mind yet, but I don't think they've committed to kinetic military action. But if they want to do it 3 days from now, they want to be able to do it.
Should the U.S. military, Dan, take action in Iran? Polling 70% say the U.S. government should not be involved. Only 18% say they should. But we've struck Iran once. I'm not saying Trump's going to do it again. And so I went back and I was like, what's the polling after that happened? 46% disapproved, 43% approved. It was a whole lot different. Basically, the American public then was much different where they are now. And I wonder, as you look at that, could it be that the public's not behind maybe a strike now, but if it's successful, if it happens like it was last summer, then maybe attitudes change?
Well, an individual action, whether it's the strike we had in Iran earlier or whether it's the Venezuela operation with Maduro, is sort of one thing, because with Venezuela, really bad polling on should we run Venezuela, should we have regime change, no one wants that, but generally 50-50 in the idea that getting Maduro out was a good or bad thing. Kind of the similar thing with the Iran strike. Getting entangled into regime change or something more robust than just an operation is a very, very different story. And I also want to point out on the people we're talking about here, you know, Pete Hegseth has never been through something like this in this level of command. Kerry Lake has shut down the Voice of America and Radio Free Europe, getting messages into Iran, which could help to actually have the civilian population hear some of the message Trump wants to get to them. And there's no, I mean, we're still moving assets in. I just wonder about the preparation for something this serious.
Seems like ultimately they'll be judged by how it goes. To your point, it's people are like they don't care about it right now. They care about 3 months from now. In Venezuela, they're fine with Venezuela right now because there's no troops on the ground. The same thing will be here in Iran.
Speaking about judging how it goes, a lot of folks didn't like the way the Epstein files were handled. President Trump in Detroit yesterday over at Ford. Someone screams at him, quote, pedophile protector, the president of the United States of America, flips that person the bird. And now the White House responding to it, basically calling it, I believe the word was appropriate. And
unambiguous.
Unambiguous, right? You say Democrats are going to run 1 million ads using this?
Yeah, but not because there's some purity or, you know, piety test that we should run here or do some pearl clutching on the vulgarity of it. It is just a really great symbol of what he is doing to the American worker. He is flipping the American worker the bird and has consistently all year.
Is he right?
I definitely expect it to be used in ads, and you know, flipping off a worker who you're trying to win over as a Republican, maybe not a good look, but this is also the president where he, you know, people have forgiven him for a lot of things, but you know, it just shows for our politics. Just
my guess is the guy's yelling out that the president's a pedophile protector. He was not a swing voter. But at the end of the day, look, this is where we are in American politics. No one cares about the demeanor of the president anymore. If they did, Tim Scott would be president, and he's not.
All right, we'll leave it there. Dan, Mick, Emily, thank you so much. Other side of the break, RFK Jr. dishes on the president's diet when we return. All right, a bit of breaking news at this moment here from Capitol Hill. Just minutes ago, the Vice President, J.D. Vance, casting a tie-breaking vote on a resolution that would have blocked the president from using military force against Venezuela. The vote struck down a procedural measure that effectively kills the bill and preserves the president's war powers. All right, if you're just getting home, trying to catch up on today's top stories, here's some of the headlines making news over at thehill.com. There's this: Tesla's self-driving feature switching to subscription only. Elon Musk announcing that Tesla's full self-driving mode will cost drivers a monthly subscription of $99 for a one-time fee of $8,000 starting a month from now. Although Musk did not give a reason for making it a subscription service. How about this? RFK Jr. He says Trump eats really bad food, but has constitution of a deity. That's the HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. saying of his opinion of the president's diet, claiming he eats a lot of junk food, Here's what he said in an interview on the Katie Miller podcast.
The interesting thing about the president is that he eats really bad food, which is McDonald's, and then, candy and Diet Coke. But he drinks the Diet Coke all times. He has the constitution of a deity. I don't know how he's alive.
Check out those stories and more. All you have to do, head on over to thehill.com. All right, time for my take now before we head on out. A grade A story that we've been covering for you. The Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act. President Trump signed the bipartisan legislation into law today. It allows schools that participate in federal lunch programs to once again offer students 2% milk. In essence, reversing an Obama-era initiative that removed fattier options.
This is the first bill signing of the new year, and it will ensure that millions of school-aged children have access to high-quality milk as we make America healthy again.
Now, you can certainly debate what kind of milk kids should or shouldn't drink, but here's what I want you to consider tonight. Over 21 million students in America receive subsidized lunches, meaning they're either free or come at a reduced price. In 2022 and 2023 school year, over 11 million kids took advantage of free or reduced breakfast at their school every single day. I thank you so much for being with us tonight here on The Hill. I'm Blake Burman. Big news out of Washington, and the president, Elizabeth, picks it up from here.